When I wrote my dad's obituary, I didn't mention my mom and exposed her years of abuse and neglect. My dad died December 1st, 2022. He briefly lived with me before his passing, after a long stint of being chronically ill for the past 15 plus years. As his health declined, he relied more on my mom for things. Prior to this, she was never a great person and fully took advantage of his disability and mobility issues as he declined. For years, she claimed to be separated and divorced, talking to other men on the internet. She made claims many times she was going to move away and marry someone else. In addition, she took advantage of him financially. We tried every legal avenue we could find to have her kicked out, arrested, or force her out, but those attempts were met with responses that it was a civil matter, and there was nothing that could be done. He made me durable POA and added me to all his accounts. This is a small portion of her abuse, but I promise her actions were no less than neglectful and exploitive. I'd tried for years to get my dad to move in with me, but he wasn't leaving the house he worked so hard to pay for. I brought him home on hospice the day after Thanksgiving and made sure his final days were the best they could be. After meeting with the funeral home to carry out his final wishes, I was told they required consent from my mother to allow me to cremate him. It was no surprise she initially told me no, and only agreed after I allowed her to keep the Social Security survivor benefits, which would have been hers anyway. I wrote his obituary and left her out of it. There was not a single word or mention he'd ever been married or had a spouse. I didn't feel she deserved to be recognized or viewed as a grieving widow when she spent their marriage as a shitty spouse in person. She lost her mind, and there were many questions from friends and family alike. I've spent years in therapy working through maternal narcissistic abuse, and believe if she didn't want me to talk about it, she shouldn't have done it. When people asked about it, I was honest about the years of abuse my father and I endured from her. I've completely ruined the public image and victim complex she spent years creating. I might be the villain in in this scenario, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I changed a baby's name of a mentally disabled woman. Please, let me explain. I used to be a volunteer with a certain org that works with disabled adults. I worked with a woman during her last trimester of pregnancy. She was diagnosed with Down syndrome, significant. Nobody was sure how she got pregnant, but was pretty sure it was a family member. This young lady had been removed from the care of her family and was in the custody of a certain organization state. Her baby was diagnosed in utero with significant issues and was not going to live but a few hours after birth. We had discussed this with her several times, but wasn't sure if she really understood. She said she did, but did she? I was with her when the little girl was born. Of course, the doctor was working on her, and the nurse asked what she wants to name her. The young lady said she heard the doctor say the most beautiful name ever, and everyone on the room was confused. Apparently, when the doctor was explaining to her what was happening to her body, he said, "You vagina may tear." All she heard was vagina may. Yep, that's what she wanted to name the baby. When we tried to explain she couldn't, she became hysterical. Not the time or place, baby was fading fast. So we calmed her, and I said I'd handle it later. A few hours later, I'm helping her do the birth and death certificate, as well as comforting her. Somehow, my finger slipped, and I put an L in the place of the G in that baby's name. I felt horrible. I just couldn't bring myself to let that poor baby be named that on her headstone. The mother couldn't read or write. Her social worker took one look at the papers, did a deep sigh of relief, and signed off on them, as did the doctor. I still feel guilty.